welcome to livealittlehigher.com. This week we continue walking with our forefather Abraham. It's a happy week. Anything that has to do with Abraham Avinu is a happy week. And we learned Parasha Vayeira, and we're going to continue learning from the Shem Mishmuel. He was a grandson of the Kotzker Rebbe, and a great Kabbalist. And today his learning is about why did the angels, the Malachim, eat when Abraham offered them food. So this Sidra, this Torah portion begins 3 days after Abraham Avinu does his Brit Milah, his circumcision. And as we know, any surgery, the third day after any surgery, it's the worst day. It's the most painful day. And for Abraham, it was very important to always have guests in his house and to do the mitzvah of Ochnasas Orehim, which is to have guests and give them food. And he was outside of his tent. It was a very sunny day, very hot. And he was talking to Hashem. And Hashem saw how sad he was that he was not having any guests that day. He made the day extra hot so he didn't have to work and he could recuperate from his surgery. But nevertheless, Hashem saw how sad he was, and he brought these 3 angels disguised as human beings to come and ask Abraham for shelter. So we see that in the parasha in Bereshit, in the book of Bereshit 18:8, it says, he took butter and milk and the calf that he had prepared, and he set it before them, and they ate. And so the parasha, the Torah, is telling us that these men, which were not really men, they were angels, ate from Abraham's house. And so the question is, did these men really eat? Is it true that they ate? After all, despite their mortal appearance, they were angels, they were Malachim, and Malachim don't need to eat food. Who do not need human food, they're sustained by God. So in the Tanah, Devei Eliyahu Rabbah, it says, anyone who claims that the Malachim did not eat when they were with Abraham Avinu is talking nonsense. Rather, in the merit of that tzaddik, and as a reward for all the effort he made, God opened their mouths and they ate. So the Malachim did eat, according to the Tanah, but only as a special act of grace towards Abraham. They did it to bring kavod to Abraham, to bring Abraham joy. And so, however, this appears to be flatly contradictory by another incident later in the Torah portion, as we shall see. It says that after they left Abraham, these 2 angels, which were the angel Michael and the angel Gabriel, one was going there to save Lot from destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and the other one was going to go and destroy the cities. We see that they encountered Lot, who was Abraham's nephew. He was not a pleasant person. He was very not righteous, not like his uncle, but he kept one mitzvah in his life, and this gave him merit. This is what gave him merit to be saved from the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And that was that he also fulfilled the mitzvah of Ochnasas Orehim, of feeding the guests, feeding the strangers. So we see that one of these angels was instructed with the task of saving Lot from the imminent destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Lot begged these Malachim, begged these angels to come into his house and stay there and lodge there and he would feed them. So we have to understand that he was putting his life in danger. And Sodom was a place that people were punished for being kind. Like if you gave food to a poor person in the street, a homeless person, you would give him food, you would end up in jail. The kindness of humanity went against the law. And this is why it was destroyed, because it became so debased that the law of the place was to punish people who were kind. And so we see in Bereshit again, it says he made a feast for them, baked matzahs, and they ate. And baked matzahs, we know this was Pesach time. They kept Pesach, Passover, they were eating matzah. And in the Torah portion it says, and they ate. So the Malachim also ate at Lot's house, even though we cast him as a wicked character. So how can the Midrash claim that the Malachim were only able to eat in the merit of Abraham Avinu? If we see they ate because he was a righteous person, we see that they also ate at Lot's house. So the Shem Mishmuel comes to teach us and get closer to understanding what's the nature of eating, what's the nature of food. And we see that there's two distinct elements involved in the act of eating. So the first and most obvious is that when you ingest food, this food goes to your digestive system. The body digests it. It takes the nutrients, whatever is good for the body, goes to the bloodstream, and then it goes to the different organs of the body, and this is what provides the body with energy to be able to move around and learn and work and do everything that the person needs to do. And whatever is not necessary for the body is disposed. But there is a second, less apparent purpose that goes regarding eating. And all of our food comes from plants and animals, some are mineral, and both of which are lower forms of life than we are. So we have the mineral world, we have vegetable world, the animal world, and the human world. So the human world is the highest in hierarchy, and we see that by ingesting them and allowing them to become part of us, we raise them to a higher form of existence. So how can a tomato be elevated, really? How can a tomato ever be elevated? So the only way a tomato can be elevated is if a person, when he ingests the tomato, uses the energy of the tomato to go and fulfill Hashem's will. When a person uses the energy that the food provides for him to be able to move and do everything he does, when he uses it to serve Hashem, then this food is elevated. And that is, we take their very limited spiritual potential and attach it to our most sophisticated and valuable mode of life. And in Kabbalistic terms, we take the words of the Sameach, plant life, and the Hai, which is the animal life, and raise them to the level of Medaber, which is human life. I remember there's a story, I don't remember which was the rabbi, it was a very important rabbi in the olden days, and this butcher came to him and he was very worried that there was a cow that he had shochet, he had sacrificed, and he didn't know if this cow was really kosher or not kosher. He had a quandary, he was not sure. So he came to this very big rabbi to ask him if this cow would be kosher, considered kosher. And he sees that the rabbi takes down the Gemara, takes down all his book, he's opening them up and learning, and in 1 hour goes by, 2 hours go by. So the butcher feels very bad. He tells the rabbi, look, I know you're a very important rabbi, and I know you have very important things to do, and I feel bad. Don't worry about the cow. I'll just sell it to a non-Jew, and we won't sell it in the store. So don't worry. And the rabbi said to him, no worry. Are you kidding me? The neshama of that cow is begging me to rule in his favor that he's a kosher animal, because the only way this animal can be elevated is through being eaten in a kosher way. So it is theoretically possible to achieve the first function of eating without any food. The angels didn't need physical nourishment. They were nourished by Hashem himself. And we see certain sources in the Torah in which people can go by without food, as Moshe Rabbeinu, when he went up to Mount Sinai to get the Luchot, he was 40 days and 40 nights in heaven with Hashem, writing down the luchot so he could bring them down to the world. While he was in heaven, he was not fed physical food. Hashem nourished him from divinity. He was not eating kosher food. He wasn't eating any physical food. And the Kabbalists state that this is one reason for the prohibition against eating and drinking in Yom Kippur, because the day is such a holy place, it's such a holy day, that the whole day nourishes the Jew. We don't need to eat and drink for the duration of Yom Kippur, because the day itself nourishes us. So we are expected to reach a spiritual plane high enough so that these physical acts are unnecessary to gain sustenance. We can receive the nourishment straight from God. So this will help us understand an assumption made by the Midrash that we quoted at the start, that the Malachim should not have eaten when they visited Abraham. Perhaps as they appear human and spoke like humans, they should also have eaten like humans, but in reality their outward appearance was just that, completely external, and it was not their real essence. Whatever Abraham saw from the outside was not who they really were. And even while they were on earth, they still retained their intimate connection to God, receiving their sustenance directly from Hashem. They were sustained by God himself. And hence the Midrash finds it necessary to explain why on this one occasion they ate human food. So we know that they did eat from Abraham's home. So let's understand these two meals, these two different meals they had in this parasha. The angels ate from Abraham and they ate from Lot. So we see that apparently the Malachim had no need for food. They didn't need to eat any food. And they draw their source from Hashem, their life source from Hashem. So if so, the purpose of any meal they might eat would be for the second function that was ascribed to eating, namely to raise the spiritual value of the food itself. So in the case of them eating at Lot's house, this was the case. They went and they ate because they were elevating the food. They were elevating the food that was given to them. And any kedusha potential that is inherent in any food given to Malachim is raised when they consume it to the level of the Malachim themselves. So this food they ate at Lot's house was elevated to the level of the angels. And this is similar to the animal offerings that were offered in the temple, in the Beit HaMikdash. One would think that the kedusha of the Mizbeach was what elevated the animal, but in reality, we see that it was we thought that the animal would raise the kedusha of the Mizbeach, of the altar. But in the case of the temple, it was such a holy place that the altar itself was the one that elevated the animal. So all this applies to an average person for whom an encounter with a malach would be an outstanding experience and whose spiritual powers is undoubtedly below that of a malachim. So obviously in Lot's case, they came to elevate the food because Lot was low. He was a low human being, and there was no way, if it wasn't through the food, to elevate him. But in the case of Abraham was such a holy man. He was of such a spiritual stature. He was even higher than the Malachim. So by they eating by Abraham, what they did was that they elevated themselves to a higher place. So one is them elevating the food. The other one is the food, because it is from such a high place, elevates them. And so we see that Shabbat, for example, the weekdays, we elevate the mundane. We're here to elevate the world. Like the case of the angels going to Lot. They were there to elevate it. Through the food, through the intentions we put when we eat. On Shabbat, it's the other way around. Shabbat and the holidays and Rosh Chodesh, the energy of the day is so high, is so elevated that the day itself elevates us. So that's why on Shabbat you can eat like a glutton, and you're not considered a glutton because you can have Oneg Shabbat, you can have the pleasure of Shabbat. The day itself elevates you. So there was a letter that a vegetarian wrote to the Rebbe Lubavitch, and he asked him what the Torah said about eating meat. Like, he couldn't believe that we ate meat, that the Jewish people are supposed to eat meat. So the Rebbe answered this vegetarian, and he said to him, look, after the Mabul, after the flood, when Noah came out of the ark, humanity was allowed to eat meat. Before that, they were vegetarians. They couldn't eat meat because they couldn't elevate the meat. They were in such a low level that they couldn't bring the meat to a higher place. They couldn't elevate it, so they couldn't eat meat. But after the Mabul, humanity was allowed to eat meat. And in reality, during the week, meat is a very coarse entity, and it's very hard to elevate meat. So the only way that a person can elevate meat during the week is if his intention when he's eating the meat, he thinks before he eats it that he's gonna eat this meat with the intention that it should give him energy, enough energy to be able to learn Torah and do mitzvot. So if during the week the person that's gonna eat the meat is able to have this consciousness, this awareness in his mind, when he eats the meat he's able to elevate the meat. Otherwise, he's not going to be able to elevate the meat. Even if he says a bracha for the meat, he's not going to be able to elevate the meat because the intention is not the right intention. So you can have a person a Jew, go to a kosher restaurant, eat kosher food, do brachas, do everything, but if he eats it with not the right intention, then he's not elevating that meat. He's not. So the Rebbe said that if a person has the stature of a person that spiritually is able to always be conscious about elevating that meat, then he should eat meat during the week. If not, he should only eat meat during Shabbat. Because Shabbat, the day itself elevates the meat. And that's why it's a mitzvah to eat meat on Shabbat and on the Yom Tov, on the holidays. It is, from the halacha viewpoint, one should have meat in his table. Otherwise, because the meat is something very special if you elevate it in the right context. So Shabbat, the holidays and Rosh Chodesh are days that the spiritual energy of the day is like that mizbeach in the Holy Temple, that it's already elevated. So whatever comes through it is going to be elevated. So during the week, we elevate the world. And during Shabbat, the Shabbat elevates us. And this is the comparison between the angels eating at Abraham's tent versus the angels eating at Lot's home. In one, they were being elevated through Abraham, and in the other one, they were elevating the food and the surroundings of Lot's home. And so this is something I thought it was very interesting to teach, that the way that we eat really makes a difference in our lives, and that the way that we eat with the right intentions really, it's the health of our body. It's not only the act of eating, it is how we eat. And at the end of the day, you are what you eat. So I want to wish you a blessed week, and remember, live a little higher. Thank you.